Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Monday, August 10th, 2020. Time for yet another week and another show, another week of shows. As a matter of fact, 5 of them gathering. That's the way the weeks have worked so far. We are back from yet another crazy weekend, another one that really moved at feverish pace to get crazier and crazier every minute that passed. So a lot of catching up to do. Greg Dworkin has been leaning on the cable and electricity folks up in Connecticut. I don't know how the electricity is doing, but we know we've got the generator running at the very least. And finally, I guess he just, they've had it with Greg at the cable company. I don't think he's been bothering them or anything. It's just that they got around to restoring service. And that was the key point of it all. He's been able to keep up with the news over the weekend, I guess through the magic of cell phones. And even without internet access, so he is up to date more or less on what's going on, but there's so much, no one person, no 2 people could possibly cover it all. And so we're bringing the dog in as well. She'll help out. And a special surprise guest, which I think we have kept no secrets about, but I don't know. Anyway, yesterday, a new story emerged on the horizon, or I guess the day before. It must have. Who cares anymore? What difference does it make what day it happened on? In addition to the usual weekend craziness, Trump. Wow, I don't know. He distracted us. He threatened us. He did all of these things in a few acts, all wrapped up into one. Introducing at his golf club in New Jersey. He took off. He absconded for the weekend. On Thursday evening, I think, he made his flight up to New Jersey. And by the way, he's gotten lazier and lazier as he's, these days, I think, taking Air Force One to Morristown Airport in New Jersey, and then from there having the helicopters flown up so that he can helicopter from Morristown to Bedminster, because he's got to hurry up and get there so that he can do no work and golf for 3 days in a row. And I don't know. I saw it hinted that this was a new development. I don't know. I mean, it's a lengthy drive, I guess, but I suppose he didn't want any time wasted. Anyway, he went up there, played his golf, and then on Friday, really just only in a total Trump style, calls a more or less impromptu press conference, which he turns into a live rally, essentially, with the attendees being whoever happened to be at the golf course at that time. People playing golf, finishing up their golf rounds. I guess there's a country club attached to it. So if you were there with your kids swimming or, whatever, playing tennis or whatever you do, lying around wasting your time in Bedminster, New Jersey's Trump National Golf Club, if you happen to be on hand, he invited you to be the audience for a press conference, which usually is press, normally, who you would have there. You don't ordinarily have a live studio audience to cheer or boo the press at a press conference. To cheer for you, boo the press. That's what they did. I mean, he introduced them to the lying fake news media and basically turned them loose to comment on a press conference announcing a bunch of other fake crap. He sold it as he would be signing 4 executive orders. Now, over the course of the weekend, we've come to find that 3 of the 4 things that he said he was announcing or introducing via executive order were, in fact, introduced by some things they were terming executive memoranda, which who knows what they are or what they do? Probably nothing. And that doesn't even get down to the level of, can he do the things that he was saying he was going to do? Did he even try to do the things that he said he was going to do? Is it illegal? Is it unconstitutional? Is there such a thing as an executive memorandum? Why did you say it was 4 executive orders when it wasn't? Are any of the things within your purview? A million different angles from which we could analyze this thing. And luckily, a million different people who could do it. but we've chosen only one. And it's been a while, and I guess it's been some time since the last extraordinary event brought him roaring back to our airwaves, which aren't really, don't involve any air, etc. I'm taking all the excitement out of it. Armando wants to chime in once again, and we're going to let him do it too. I see we're having the usual problem with Skype not recognizing that it's being asked to do a job here. Let me see. Is there any way, can I just click on something so that Greg just appears? No. I mean, it's ringing like crazy on the other computers, but once again, the main computer to which we are connected does not seem interested in handling this. All right, what we'll have happen here is I will try calling Greg myself, and we'll see whether that works. I don't know what's going on. Hey, Greg. Hi. We'll just pretend that you called me and continue on from there, and probably fight Skype after school at some point. Okay.
Yeah, step outside.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll wait for you in here.
It's air conditioned in here. Besides which, you probably have coronavirus.
Get
out of there. I'm in here myself. They're trying to get in here, and I know what it is in the school buildings. You can't let anybody in, or you'll all get sick. So,
well, Skype and answering the phone, it's all chaos. It's a day that ends in Y, so, why not start the week off the same way that the weekend happened?
Sure.
So let me give you my recap of New England's Storm Center here.
Yes.
As many of you know, we took the trouble to actually install a whole house generator in anticipation of exactly what happened last week.
Right.
And it worked beautifully. As soon as the power went out, it cut it immediately. Didn't even turn off the clocks on the microwave and that sort of thing, which are very sensitive. But the only problem is we had electricity through the generator, but we had no internet because the cable and the landline went out. The landline that we keep for emergencies.
Oh, do you actually have a dial-up?
Yeah, I kept one just because that's often the last thing that goes. And it was the last thing that went, but it still went.
Did go. Yeah, all right.
So I'll send you some pictures later, but I have some lovely snapped into utility poles with the top of it hanging right like 2 inches above the street.
Wow.
And there was plenty of that. There was an actual tornado in EF1 in Westport, south of us, that came up this way. By the time it got here, it wasn't a tornado anymore, but the winds were still pretty fierce. Yeah. And about 95% of the town was out, and maybe 60, 70 roads were impassable.
Wow.
So you're sort of stuck in this loop. You can't clear the trees until the power company's involved, and the power company can't get there to assess until you clear the trees.
Yes.
So you have to set up dual reconstruction crews to go out, and that just takes a while. There's nothing you can do that can hurry it, other than this time maybe think about burying the wires instead of having them out there.
Yeah, that's the hot new thing that they've been doing for 40
years. Well, it would cost
years.
money. Yeah, well, having the power go out and reconstructing the entire grid.
Yeah.
This is the third time in 8 years that we've had to do this.
It's you're getting worsening weather. Maybe they'll think about something like this.
That's the point. That's why we got a generator, because we're getting worsening weather.
President Trump know that when the top of the utility pole snaps off and is dangling just a few feet off the ground, it is permissible only, by virtue of our weird federal system. Presidents can approach such power sources and rescue the town themselves by grabbing tightly hold of these power wires. It's illegal to electrocute a sitting president, so you should just go ahead and try it.
Yeah, well, you have to wait until he's out of office. We
only got a couple of weeks left.
My neighbor, who had a home in Vieques in Puerto Rico, reminds us all that, hey, you got yourself a nice generator there. It's propane. That'll run for a week. You should have done diesel. At the size of the tank you have, that could run for 6 months. Ask me how I know.
Yeah. I have questions about what your neighbors would think about a diesel generator on your property, but, maybe they won't.
We don't need it, really. I mean, a week's fine. This thing could run a week without touching it. Although every 3 days you have to check the oil and top it off a little bit.
Okay.
And which I've been doing. So it's very easy to maintain. And then when the power came on, it's smoothly powered down, and you didn't even notice the difference.
That's nice.
If we had cable, I would have been able to do the show and do everything.
Yeah.
But we didn't.
No, you didn't. And of course, the real point, of course, Puerto Rico, you might need to run your generator for 6 months or a year or more.
Or more, right.
There's
so,
no power there still.
we had it easy compared to other people.
Yeah.
And we had the usual mishaps and deaths and, other things that happened through storm-related, not your fault, and also storm-related stupidity, which sort of is your fault, but is still tragic. For example,
yes.
You have the branches that fall on people. There's not much you can do about that.
Yeah, that's certainly out of your
We
control.
have the people out helping neighbors with chainsaws.
Yes.
And in several cases, either they didn't really know how to use it, or they brought out a mortar saw to help, and the saw got caught in the tree. When they pulled back, it snapped back with tragic consequences.
Yes.
So the moral of this story is, on the one hand, you really need the right tool for the right job, and on the other hand, you're better off letting somebody do it for you.
Yes,
if you don't know how to do it yourself, because stay safe.
Yeah, all right. Wow. Well, chainsaw skills not often called on for people, who just happen to have them lying around or whatever. But I guess
and it's funny. I live on a cul-de-sac.
Yes.
And it's what I like to call, when I was growing up, we used to call a working class neighborhood.
All right.
Right. So we have the pediatrician, and across the street is an electrician, and then the next house over is a carpenter, and the next house over is a guy who works for UPS, and the next,
You sound like a microeconomics textbook is what you sound like.
Well, we don't have any microeconomics professors on the block.
I see. Well, I guess macro, really.
Or macro.
Yeah.
At the end of the block. Looking over the whole street. So, everybody's just out there helping everybody else. And at the moment, at least, although we all have generators. In fact, I sold my old one to my neighbor.
Oh.
And then helped him cart it over because it's sitting in my garage. He bought it, but he never picked it up until the power went out, and then he came over and got it. I helped him get it.
I can't plug this in. What's happening?
Yeah. Said, well, his brother-in-law is an electrician, so everything's cool. But I have the only whole power generator on the block, whole house generator.
Everyone else is going to get
one.
one.
So the point is, how do you know the power goes back on? Because what you do when you use the generator is you cut yourself off from the grid so you don't electrocute the lineman.
Oh, nice
and
of you.
Then you run your generator as best you can, depending upon the size of the generator. You're just doing the fridge, or you're doing the whole house, or whatever you do.
Mm-hmm.
But when my generator goes off, the neighbors know the power's back on. That's the signal.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So for those who aren't paying attention, then once the power comes back on, then I'm the block captain, and I go around knocking at all the houses, did you know the power's back on? You turn your generator off.
Yeah, okay.
Somebody has to do that, because somebody has to be first to figure it out.
Well, there you might do well with that diesel after all. I don't think anybody will mistake when the diesel engines go on and off.
No, it sounds like a train because it sounds like a train. Yeah. So, we got by. The electrician came over to help with some things, and the carpenter came over to help with other things. And, I would go over there to check on their kids, and, everybody's good. So it's a very nice little block, and very happy with where we live.
Johnson. Yeah, good. Well, I'm glad it worked out, and I'm glad the whole house generator pays off, not only for you, but for all your neighbors as well. Plus, somebody else got a generator out of it. That's nice.
No, it worked out for everybody.
Yeah.
But it was incredibly disruptive. And, of course, our primary's tomorrow.
Okay. Yes, you need a
right. So we had vote by mail
generator.
for the first time. There was we added no excuse needed vote by mail stuff.
Okay.
And we talked about this on the show. My vote by mail application came, and they had never done it before, so they did it in a way that you have to refold the application so that it's the town clerk's address and not your address that shows through the little window there, the cellophane window. We got that back to them. We got our ballot. We figured out how to fill out the ballot. We sent that back, and that was weeks ago, so hopefully they got it. They are going to be putting up drop boxes, but with the storm, dropping off the ballot didn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, it would have in a normal situation, but this week was like really a bad time for that to happen, so we'll see how it affects the voting percentages.
Yeah.
When the numbers come in, whenever they come in, who knows?
Can the box
but
float
the goal of everybody in Connecticut was to have all the power back and running. Half the state was out. To have all the power back and running by tomorrow night, because tomorrow's election day.
Yeah. Does it look like it's going to work?
Yeah. Well, our town is mostly back. Again,
Okay.
I took Abby for a walk yesterday, and you could still see there were some cul-de-sacs and some areas that I could walk to where trees were down and the lines were still on the street. And, when you're in a cul-de-sac and you're the last house and that's the wire that came down, you're going to be the last one that gets fixed.
Well, that's what you get for living at the end of the cul-de-sac. That's right where the cul-de-sac ends and the tree-de-sac starts.
Yeah, well, that's where the
macroeconomics
professor has their house. So,
Okay.
they can just wait it out.
He knew what he was buying into, and he got a discount on the house appropriately.
Exactly. So the rest of us, anyway, were okay. So that's the update as to what's going on there. That's why I wasn't on the show on Thursday or Wednesday or whatever day ended and why. I can't even remember anymore. But here it is Monday, and we have our usual Monday problem of trying to summarize a complete weekend of chaos and make it into some sort of coordinated situation. So let me start with probably the best read, maybe of the entire week.
Let's do that.
And this one is Lord Salatin, William Salatin, with the Trump pandemic, a blow-by-blow account of how the president killed thousands of Americans, which is, pretty good summary.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
So let me just read a couple of first paragraphs because I think it summarizes exactly what's going on, and it'll help to put everything else in perspective. On July 17th, President Trump sat for a Fox News interview at the White House. At the time, nearly 140,000 Americans were dead from the novel coronavirus. Remember, that isn't just a couple of weeks ago there. Isn't that long? The interviewer, Chris Wallace, showed Trump a video clip in which Robert Redfield, the director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, otherwise known as CDC, and as you probably know, somebody who I thought should have resigned a long time ago, warned of a difficult fall and winter ahead. Trump dismissed this warning. He scoffed that experts had misjudged the virus all along. Everybody thought the summer would go away, said Trump. They used to say the heat was good for it, and it really knocks it out, so they got that one wrong. And, of course, Trump's account was completely backward. Redfield and the other U.S. public health officials had never promised heat would knock out the virus. In fact, they cautioned against that assumption. The person, and of course he gives links to all of these, the person who had held out the false promise of a warm weather reprieve again and again was Donald Trump.
Yes.
And he hadn't gotten the idea from any of his medical advisors. He gotten it from Xi Jinping, the president of China, in a phone call in February.
That I did not know.
The phone call, the talking points Trump picked up from it, his subsequent attempts to cover up his alliance with Xi are part of a deep betrayal. The story the president now tells, that he built the greatest economy in history, that China blindsided him by unleashing the virus, and that Trump saved millions of lives by mobilizing America to defeat it, is a lie. Trump collaborated with Xi, concealed the threat, impeded the U.S. government's response, silenced those who sought to warn the public, and pushed states to take risks that escalated the tragedy. He's personally responsible for tens of thousands of deaths, and this is not speculation. All the evidence is in the public record. But the truth, unlike Trump's, false narrative is scattered in different places. It's in emails, leaks, interviews, hearings, science reports, president's stray remarks. This article puts those fragments together. It documents Trump's interference or negligence in every stage of the government's failure: preparation, mobilization, public communication, testing, mitigation, and reopening. And then this paragraph, Trump has always been malignant and incompetent. As president, he's coasted on economic growth, narrowly averted crises of his own making, corrupted the government in ways that many Americans could ignore. But in the pandemic, his vices: venality, dishonesty, self-absorption, dereliction, heedlessness, turned deadly. They produced lies, misjudgments, and destructive interventions that multiplied the carnage. The coronavirus debacle isn't, as Trump protests, an artificial problem that spoiled his presidency. It's the fulfillment of everything he is.
Boo,
it's really a lovely introduction to everything that happened this week.
Yeah, I mean, that sums it up nicely. He's been hired a couple of times to do that, Salatin, but that's about it.
Right, and then he goes ahead and documents everything, right? But the point therein,
what else do you want to know?
Is that Trump does everything wrong, then turns it around. You're saying I'm stealing, you're stealing.
Right.
You're saying I'm lying, you're lying. Yeah. You're saying I'm collaborating with the Russians? You're collaborating with the. I mean, everything about Trump is I'm rubber, you're glue kind of stuff. It's schoolyard taunts, but it doesn't work in a pandemic. Virus doesn't care.
No, and we can't open the schoolyards.
Well, he says we can and we can't, and so that's the other problem coming. And so that leads to everything that happens therein. You know, we'll spend some time talking about his ridiculous executive orders trying to show that he's great, dear leader, and they won't work. And interestingly, both Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi hit the Sunday shows. And one of the pieces on that's so interesting on Good Morning America, Schumer basically said, you know, I'll leave whether or not those executive orders are legal to the lawyers. I think that doesn't really matter.
Yes, well,
you know, let's just talk about the fact that they're going to be completely ineffective. And what's also interesting is that Nancy Pelosi hit up the Chris Wallace show on Sunday.
Okay.
And, you know, hey, Chris Wallace, what a great interviewer. He interviewed Donald Trump. He could make mincemeat of everybody. It's about time Democrats went on there. So Nancy Pelosi goes on.
Oh.
And here's this story from the Daily Beast. If Chris Wallace was trying to prove to Fox News viewers he could grill Democratic leaders just as hard as President Trump in his biggest sycophants, it may have worked.
Okay.
Vice President Joe Biden has declined to appear on Fox News Sunday, but this week Wallace sat down with the highest-ranking Democrat in the Congress, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Referring to the proposed executive action of the president, Wallace asked, won't millions of Americans now get some extended federal unemployment relief and some protections for evictions now rather than nothing at all? And Pelosi said, no.
Okay.
Agreeing with Republican Senator Ben Sasse, who called the action unconstitutional slop. After she broke down everything that wouldn't get addressed, Wallace came back with, but Speaker, I understand the president's executive action doesn't do everything you want, but having no bill at all, not coming to any agreement, wasn't going to provide any of the things you want either. And then, flattering his guest as a master negotiator, the host said, didn't you mess this up? Shouldn't you have cut a deal? And Pelosi just glared at him and said, clearly, you don't have an understanding of what's happening here.
Okay.
Both in the weakness of the president's executive orders, which don't give the money enhanced benefits, but puts a complicated formula there, which will take a while, if at all, to accomplish anything. And Wallace tried to jump in with another question. Pelosi said to him, look, I allowed you to finish. You allow me to finish. We'll meet him halfway. They refused. And when you look at those executive orders, the kindest thing I can say, this is a direct quote, is he doesn't know what he's talking about or something's very, very wrong there. To characterize them as something that would take the place of an agreement isn't so. So, you know, fine. Chris Wallace asked tough questions. She had tough answers. Fact of the matter is that his orders got panned in the press. I watched NBC Nightly News try to summarize it yesterday. Trump said things, but nobody really thinks it'll work. It's basically the summary for the low information voter.
Okay.
New York Times, Trump's orders on coronavirus relief create confusion. Businesses and the unemployed face uncertainty as administration officials defended the president's directives and Democrats criticized them. They're both sidesing it. But what they can't say, what they'd love to say, what a lot of people would love to say is this is the great pivot where Trump finally was president. Well, they can't because none of this stuff is working.
I think they would like to say that. They tried it last time.
But they can't.
Well, there are too many problems with it, I guess, to be able to get away with that one cleanly. And, I mean, good. I'm glad they recognize it. I mean, that wasn't a given by any means.
It wasn't. And not just that. Here's ABC with a different take, but the sort of same theme. Trump power play collides with GOP's old principles and new realities.
Okay.
In other words, he'd like to get up there and say, okay, I'm taking over, I'm in charge, and the party will rally around me and we'll do everything. And half of the party say, well, it's going to cost too much money. We're not into it.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Because all of a sudden we're deficit peacocks again, you see. And so we can't go along with what you're trying to do. And besides, that's executive overreach, which we're going to need for when you lose. So we may as well put our markers down right now.
Yeah.
That we're not into this.
Yeah, that's their old play. They say that about everything that
when
Obama
you are in the minority.
Right. So they're getting ready for that.
In the few minutes we have left before the break, I just came across this tweet, which I was just laughing hysterically, and I think you'd appreciate it as much as anybody else. It's a CIA memo from 1944 about how to infiltrate organizations.
Okay.
But it could read as marching orders for how Congress works. That's why it's so funny.
I see. Yeah, I'm looking at it. You're right. It's certainly
general interference with organizations to protect. This is how you interfere with organizations getting anything done. Okay, number one, insist on doing everything through channels. Okay. Regular orders, says John McCain.
Hey, wait a minute. Well,
never permit shortcuts to be taken in order to expedite decisions.
Okay.
Number two, make speeches.
That's a good one.
Talk as frequently as possible and at great length. Illustrate your points by long anecdotes and accounts of personal experiences. It was written in 1944.
Well, that's the Senate.
How to infiltrate organizations. Never hesitate to make a few appropriate patriotic comments.
What? Okay.
When possible, refer all matters to committees for further study and consideration. Attempt to make the committee as large as possible, never less than 5.
That's the way. All right. I mean, did they infiltrate, 1776 here?
I think so. Bring up the relevant issues as frequently as possible. Haggle over precise wordings of communications minutes and resolutions. Refer back to matters decided upon at the last meeting and attempt to reopen the question. Okay. Advocate caution and be worried about the propriety of any decision. Raise the question of whether such action, as contemplated, lies within the jurisdiction of the group or whether it might conflict with the policy of some higher echelon. It's brilliant. It's exactly how Congress works. And, of course, that's how you infiltrate organizations to make sure they slow down and don't get stuff done.
Yeah, all right.
And that pretty much explains how come we don't have any, unemployment insurance right now.
Oh, yeah. Or the CIA invented homeowners associations.
Well, so I think that what happened is the Democrats had a bill, the HEROES Act, and it was passed 3 months ago. Yeah. Republicans decided to do nothing. They thought it was a good idea. And now they're backing Trump because they have nothing else, and it's not working with the public, and it's not going to work long term. And you know what? Pelosi's right.
Yeah, well, largely true. Oh, that is some memo, certainly, although I object to their objection to doing things.
You want to send it back to committee?
Yeah, probably we should do that. Motion to recommit that one, and we'll see whether that works. That's pretty interesting. We'll be right back in 2 minutes. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. And send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We are still with Greg Dworkin. We've got a lot more to cover, of course. By the way, in coronavirus news, because there still is one out there, I'll throw out there that I happened to just see fly by a reminder that I guess Texas just recently posted its highest 7-day average positivity rate. And fun article from over the weekend that maybe we'll spend some time on later in the show. You remember that the president told us probably less than a week ago that kids are almost immune or practically immune to the coronavirus.
Except for the ones that die.
Right. Those, and then the 97,000 found to be positive for coronavirus in a 2-week span in July during, I guess, a testing pilot program, just checking out basically how many kids out there, if we swab a bunch of them, are we going to find in the positive category. And I had somebody push back on it and say, well, 97,000 out of how many? 56 million kids under 18 in this country? Yeah, in 2 weeks, man. 2 weeks.
Right. Well, see, part of the problem there is the whole, what are you trying to say? Well, kids are immune and they don't get it. Okay, well, what about these 97,000 who clearly have it? Okay, well, they have it, but they're not really sick. Well, you don't know what percentage of them not only are sick, but you also don't know what percentage of them passed it along to grandma. And by the way, if you do get sick and wind up in the hospital, you're just as likely as a kid to wind up in the ICU and die. So it's not a good disease to have, and the kids are not immune from it. And the idea that the rest of your summer recreation is more important than what happens in the fall with the kids. It's just a ridiculous concept. And so, what we've been going through in terms of Salatin's description of how Trump approached all of this, plus the reality of what's happening now, whether it's Texas, whether you're talking about the kids, or whether you're talking about schools opening, is why Trump's going to lose this election. And so, a brief look at the polls. While I was away, everybody got bored and so, oh my God, the polls are tightening because, are they really? Maybe. I don't know. Hard to tell. I'll tell you one way to tell. And that is, you look at the quality polls, as both G. Elliott Morris and Harry Antonis have pointed out, and Nate Cohen. What's happened is that the quality live calling pollsters, like, for example, Marquette MU Law Poll, which is coming out tomorrow on Wisconsin, and will be a good judge of where we're at. In May, Biden led by 3 in Wisconsin in this particular high-quality poll, gold standard poll. And in June, he led by 8. There was no poll in July. August is coming out tomorrow. So we'll get a sense of whether things have tightened or whether they haven't. But what we do know is that the lower quality polls come up and make the difference. They're mostly what's on Real Clear Politics, which is why I don't use their average for the Biden versus Trump stuff. I only use it to help find things. 538 is a much better way of looking at it because they adjust for the fact that low-quality polls like Rasmussen and Hill Harris and the new Scott Rasmussen stuff and all the other garbage is mostly what's in there. So you have to look at quality polls and see what's going on. Maybe there's tightening, maybe there hasn't been, but if there has been, it's only been a point or so. And none of that's really going to change the trajectory of what's going on. When you look at the battleground state polls, which aren't as good as individual states, but some of these actually do poll individual states. We have one, for example, from this morning. This is a YouGov poll, and it was done from July 27th to August 6th. So these wide time frame polls aren't quite as good as tight ones. We have another YouGov that's only over a few days yesterday, just to compare. Today's Wisconsin had Biden by 6. Yesterday's, which was done only over a couple of days, had Biden by 6. Pennsylvania, done over a couple of weeks, had Biden by 9. Yesterday's had Biden by 6. Michigan was done over a couple of weeks, had Biden plus 4, and there wasn't one that was done yesterday of Michigan over the narrow range, so we don't quite know. And whether those really represent differences or not, hard to tell. That's why I like the MU Law Poll coming out tomorrow. Fact of the matter is Biden still leads. And when you break down what's going on in those YouGov polls that CBS did, you find that 3/4 of the public really thinks things are going badly, that the virus is winning, and for the most part blames Trump. And so you can take your numbers and go up or down a point or two any way you want to. Fact of the matter is that everybody in the country understands what's going on. And there are people who will lie to you about it anyway. But that's a different story. In fact, that story probably best summarized by this fantastic, yet another article looking at white evangelicals, basically saying that, Trump is awful. We all understand that, but he hates the right people, and so we're with him. Okay, I get that. That's never going to change. What is going to change is more and more information coming out that's going to help everybody else make up their mind. For example, the Jerry Falwell stuff over the weekend. Can't forget that.
Yes, I'm trying, but I can't.
Well, what you can't forget is having seen them, you can't unsee those pictures that he sent on vacation, right? With his pants more or less down, with another woman whose pants were more or less down, and then trying to explain it, and then Liberty University saying, you know what, it's about time you took a leave of absence.
Yes.
And why is that important? Because the speculation is that Trump knew about those pictures in that lifestyle for a long time, whether it's the pool boy or anybody else, and basically coerced Falwell into a endorsement that changed the face of the 2016 election to a certain extent because every vote counted.
Yeah. Well, no surprise that he was more or less compromising for sale.
Yeah, right. So he doesn't have Jerry Falwell this time to go around. Okay. So that's kind of important. So, that's the background for everything that's going on. So Biden continues to have a pretty solid and relatively stable lead in the polls. We have the vice presidential stuff. I am so glad I was offline for all of that. Sometime this week, he'll pick a vice presidential candidate. We'll all get behind it. And that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. It's about my interest in it. I mean, I'm interested to know. just like everybody else, and let me know when it happens, and I'll.
It's news.
And I'll
Everything else is the
person.
same, so it's not news. Trump is an idiot. That's not news. Pandemic's still going on. That's not news. But now we'll know who the vice presidential candidate is. That's news, and so it's interesting. We're all bored.
Yes.
Except for those of us who are just trying to get our lives together.
Yeah, that's true. We've been occupied, but the vice presidential battling there's just no interest in it for me. There are people who are very wrapped up in it. I don't really know if I know anybody who changed their vote. I've heard of people saying, "Oh, my vote depends on it," but those aren't people I know or hang out with or who are Democrats. But I'll be pleased.
Here's the thing. People get very passionate about their politicians. I don't. Sure. I never have. You haven't either. I tend to be passionate about the country and a little less passionate, but still passionate about policy. And politicians are like way down on the scale. I don't really care.
I mean, there are people I like more than others, but I
like people more than other people. I dislike people more than other people. Yeah. But there's people I passionately hate. Yeah. I don't want David Duke to be anything, for example, and I don't want people who David Duke endorses,
it's not
like Donald Trump, to be anything.
Difference.
Fine. Okay, I get that. And it's important. Don't get me wrong. But, the things that motivate me are, America and what makes it great. You know what makes America great?
That's nice.
I'll tell you what makes America great.
Is this one of those patriotic comments you're supposed to throw in to infiltrate my organization?
Exactly right.
Go on.
You got to be really patriotic, right? You got to go as a teenager to high school and take pictures of everybody crowded together in a hallway and say, this is wrong. And when the school suspends you, you have to turn to the camera and say, I'm just making good trouble, necessary trouble.
Yeah.
Which she did.
Right.
And then they unsuspended her, and now she's back at school. Of course, at least 9 people have the virus now.
Yeah, she's not back at school. She's
but
unsuspended.
That's what makes America great.
Yeah. Well, I thought that was a great
people
story.
Who say, I'm not even mentioning his name. I'm just telling you.
I'm saying.
It's good trouble, necessary trouble, and you put the pieces together.
Yeah.
That's what I learned about America. Yeah, well, you know what? You got a good education if that's what you learned about America.
All right. And well done. And we'll continue with your education. Update on that story. She was unsuspended, but she's not back at school because there's no school. Because everybody's
Well, that's going to happen to everybody this fall. If you don't get it, you're going to get it. And if you don't get the concept, you're going to get the virus. I mean, it's just that simple.
Yeah. There's the lesson for you. You'd rather get the concept than the virus. So why not just do it?
So meanwhile, politically, Matt Beiser has a nice piece in the Washington Post. Democrats will highlight everyday Americans in their primetime convention lineup. You know how the Lincoln Project is highlighting everyday Republicans?
Yes.
I used to vote for Trump. I can't anymore. This is why. Now they're going to highlight everyday Americans. I used to have a life, and then this guy came along and ruined it, and this is why. And this is why I'm voting for Joe Biden, because, he's a decent guy.
Okay.
He's going to bring dignity
Seems
back
thematic.
to America.
Sure. Yeah. Why not? I mean, more so than
the list
Trump.
of speakers who is provided to the Washington Post includes a former Trump voter from Pennsylvania who's supporting Biden, paramedic and immigrant from Mexico City on the front lines of the pandemic in Florida, bus driver from Atlanta, and an auto worker from Lake Orion, Michigan. These are people from all parts of the country, all walks of life, different professions, different financial situations. Sounds like my block here.
Yes.
All dealing with similar things. Right. It's really the story of what's happening across America right now. Stephanie Cutter, the program executive for the convention, said in an interview, what it doesn't say in the story is whether they're all interviewed in a Pennsylvania diner or a McDonald's in West Virginia, but it could be.
Did they get any coal miners? They're supposed to get coal miners. I hope so. They should work on that because we need to find out whether the coal miners got what they wanted. Did all their jobs come back? Is coal huge? Et cetera, et cetera. How are the coal miners doing during the pandemic? West Virginia hasn't.
I don't know. Are they going back to school? I don't know.
I mean, they might as well, I suppose. I guess if you ask coal miners, back to school and risk respiratory illness, or back to work and risk respiratory illness, I don't know which one they choose.
Or respiratory illness for your kids. The campaign confirmed that Bernie Sanders will speak Monday night. Obama, both Michelle and Barack will also have speaking roles. Kasich, Andrew Cuomo, Bill Clinton. Those are among the celebrity speakers, and then you got the ordinary everyday American speakers, which frankly I'd rather hear from.
Oh, okay. Well, they'll be interesting. I understand there was some controversy for a while about whether and when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez would be able to speak. And I heard first no, then yes, and now I'm not certain where it rests, but I think it's probably yes, because, the people who run these things have some brains and can figure out what they need to do to interest different audiences. But I don't know. For some reason, there was a big worry fest for about 6 hours. And, oh my God, they might not be smart enough to know that she should speak. But members of Congress can generally get a slot here and there. So, all right. Well, I guess she's got one, and I think maybe the fight was over whether or not it should be prime time or not. That could be. All right. Well, I don't know the outcome to that yet, but I will find out. Someone will yell it at me and probably tweet it, and then we'll have it for you. All right. Let's see. Anything else we need to touch on before we move on to the executive orders?
Yeah, well, let's talk about executive orders.
All right.
I mean, there's a lot to talk about there.
We could do that.
I don't know whether they're legal. I do know that if you try to implement something like this by the seat of your pants, it's not going to work all that well. And there's nothing about it that yells speed. And people need this money right away. And the idea that Nancy Pelosi has given away all of her leverage is sort of ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay, that's true.
There's incredible amounts of pressure on Republican officials who are up for re-election, which is everybody in the House and a good deal of them in the Senate, to get something done. That's still true. And the need is still there, and the pressure's still there.
Yes. And so the idea what should we do?
that we can just bypass Pelosi and I'll just do these executive orders. And then the press will say, I did everything and see I'm leading. That's like the pandemic article that I read from Will Salatin. Trump has this idea of a cardboard or a Potemkin president where you do stuff on TV, and that's like the same thing as doing it in real life.
And apparently it turns out that there's forms that you should be sticking to. I mean, I know this sounds a lot like a CIA infiltration video, or instruction manual. There are certain ways you're supposed to do these things, and I guess it excites him.
Well, has he done them in those usual ways?
Well, a couple of them
not everything
he
said was an executive order is even an executive order.
Right. Well, in some cases it's not an order at all, and in some cases it doesn't really involve the executive, except for the fact that he's the one that said it. We should do
there's
this.
that.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I'm wondering also just in terms of show dynamics. So is this a point at which we ought to call on Armando to join us, or?
I think so. He knows a little bit about executive order.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, he's been raring to go on this thing. So I'll give him the message that he can go ahead unless, by now he will have heard this on the radio, very likely. All right. Well, I'll let him know we're ready, and he can go ahead and call on in. I'm sure. This is probably going to take the rest of the year.
Call? How does this work?
I don't know. Well, let's see. I will. I think he'll call, and I might be able to. There we go. Is this the button? There's new buttons. This looks like a merger button to me, I think. Let's try that.
Don't try this at home, folks.
Okay. Whoops. We missed his call. I hit the button too late. All right. Although then I got a thing that said Armando has joined. So let's see. Armando, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. See. All right. Fantastic.
I'm still here,
I thought
too.
this was malfunctioning. They changed the look of the button since we did this last. Skype always updating things so that you don't know what's happening.
Yeah, that's what Trump said. I was going to do this executive order that fixed the entire country, but apparently they changed all the buttons here, and the one I clicked just launched missiles to Moscow. I'm so sorry about that, but it's Obama's fault. He did.
Yes, you're right.
Oh, it was Obama's fault. Said Rick Santorum this morning. Apparently, before I came on. Yes,
but neither of them have been in office for so long. How would they know?
And they said, what was Obama's fault? And Santorum said, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. just take this for later.
He was speaking specifically about the executive actions. It's Obama's fault.
For opening the door to executive overreach?
I think the argument he probably made, I didn't watch it, was that DACA was the reason Obama did it. And in fact, Trump probably, he kept running around saying the DACA decision gave him the power to do a new health plan, which, by the way, there was another executive action on pre-existing conditions the day before, which we've completely forgotten about.
Which one?
Well, that's because the Affordable Care Act already has pre-existing conditions.
Right, exactly. The joke was Trump declares the sun will rise in the east.
Yes, yeah. That one was pretty amazing.
Right. I listened to what you guys were talking about. Oh, by the way, the last time I was on, David, I was looking on my Skype thing for my last call.
We only do extraordinary circumstances.
Our coronavirus cases were close to zero. In January.
Oh, okay. Right, when we were discussing, I don't know if
everyone
remembers
fault.
This, but we impeached the president. Not
That's
everyone
right.
recalls
we were
that
impeaching the
anymore.
president at the time. That's why I called.
If you would come on more often, we'd have less cases.
That's right.
QED.
Close to zero. It was a hoax back then. Now it's by the way, it'll come up if we discuss just the legalities of the executive orders yesterday, not the pre-existing conditions one from Friday. The president, in order to actually legalize what he's doing with the one substantive thing he did, and there's a good article at Balkanization, I think you guys probably have read it.
Not yet.
Who did a nice analysis. There's 4 executive orders. 3 of them are to call them meager is to really give them more credit that they deserve, but they pretty clearly fall within legalities. For example, the student debt deferral, the payment of student debt and interest, obviously, which are federally funded or federally insured, is a power the federal government has. It's very likely that the executive branch, sort of DACA-like, does have prosecutorial or enforcement discretion to say, we're going to give you more time. Similarly, the proposed payroll tax deferral wasn't a cut or even a holiday, to be honest with you. I'm not even sure what they think that does. It's basically just you don't have to pay for these 3 months. You just have to pay in January.
Yeah, right. We're not going to collect it now. That doesn't excuse you from obligation to pay it. It's just we'll collect it later, possibly under the next president is when it would likely come due. And he's to the extent that he's thinking about losing it all, he says, well, when a bill comes due and hurts people, they'll blame Biden for it, not me.
But the big thing and the centerpiece of all of this is what happens with unemployment compensation.
Right. Well, but the 2 executive orders I've just talked about are, I think, akin to DACA in that they go to enforcement power of the executive branch. I mean, to the degree you see those as gray areas, it's a pretty conventional gray area that presidents have sort of either, if you disagree with them, have strayed into powers that might belong to the legislature. But it's certainly a gray area, and you can argue both sides of that, just as you could the DACA and DAPA stuff. I mean, those are certainly arguable both ways. The ones that I thought, and I went crazy, of course, as I always do, when I first heard it, I thought he was appropriating monies, particularly for unemployment extension, even at the level he said it was. I said, you can't just take money. But when you read that order, at least at its face, it's still illegal. If you read David Stuper's analysis of balkanization, he explains why it doesn't conform with the laws for disaster relief. But the key component to accessing $44 billion of disaster relief funds, which, by the way, those are the same disaster relief funds that you would need in Connecticut to deal with the thing that you've just gone through, or the expected historic hurricane activity this summer that the NWS National Weather Service has predicted now. Right. But he's taking $44 billion, but I think it's within the context of a legal declaration that the COVID virus is a national natural disaster. And, I mean, you can quibble and say that's not what this was intended for, etc. But it's not beyond the pale, in my view, to say that this is a natural national disaster, and I have the power to provide financial assistance to persons suffering from this natural disaster. And there's this fund here that has $44 billion unspent that I can tap for that purpose. The problem is, as Stuper points out in his very good article, and again, I recommend to everybody, Balkanization has it. You don't have to be a lawyer. It's actually written in, I think, very plain language.
Balkanization is the blog, and the article is entitled Inadequate, Unworkable, and Unlawful, the Trump Unemployment Aid Program. That's what you're looking for.
Right. And the reason why you can't actually apply it to unemployment is that the law actually prohibits expressly use for if you're for unemployment. If you qualify for other unemployment benefits, you can't get financial assistance benefits under this law. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. It's not that it prohibits it. It just says that if you're getting unemployment already, you can't get this.
And yes, and this is
it's meant for people who aren't getting it.
Right. In essence, it's written expressly now. If you just focus on the language of financial assistance, you could definitely pigeonhole it into providing unemployment insurance assistance. But unfortunately, that the law is written to expressly prohibit use for people who are already receiving unemployment insurance. So it simply is illegal. Is it a separation of powers threat at the level that I thought it was when I first heard he was just taking, he was just going to print money?
Yeah.
Mnuchin was just going to start sending out checks.
Right.
President,
that was
we'd
the
like
way it
to
was
think
presented.
the president just can't do that.
It would be nice. And so far, this week, they aren't trying to do that exactly. But could they come back next week and make that claim? Yeah, they should. They could. They might. Maybe if they find out this one's illegal. I don't know what would stop them from pressing forward anyway. But
yeah, and I think that there's talk of a workaround that I don't think actually works based on Stuper's analysis, which is that they create some new structure and don't call it unemployment and just send people checks through that. The problem is that the exclusion is for people who do receive unemployment. So even if they created a new program for people to apply to, it would exclude the people who are already on unemployment. So it wouldn't help the people that you're trying to help.
If you're trying to help.
I don't think it's fixable.
Okay. Well, what does he care? He put about 10 minutes of thought into it. Well, he himself put no thought into it, but
that's the legal underpinnings. And then the question is, from a practical point of view, does this get money in people's hands quickly? Is there any possible way to do that? And in fact, what he's also doing is asking the states to pay for a lot of this, which they don't have money to do.
Right. Well, let's take that piece as well. I mean, there's another legal issue, it would seem to me, is that the requirement that the state governments provide 25% of the funding is frankly now, because John Roberts invented this new thing, probably unconstitutional under the Sebelius case, which you may not recall. If you do, you'll notice about the Medicaid expansion being required, and that changed a program. The unemployment program exists as of today, and its funding pattern is already established. But to get this new money, i.e. to expand unemployment, you have to spend more money. And that, to me, sounds pretty much very much in the wheelhouse of the crazy, unacceptable Sebelius decision. But that's when you force a decision that isn't right, as John Roberts did in that case. This is how things come back to bite you in the ass. So there's really even the one thing that he did that mattered, because we didn't talk about the eviction thing, but the eviction thing is just an order to various federal agencies to see what you can do to help people out.
Yes,
that's basically the order. I mean, there's nothing to it, and I think that's why it's a memorandum.
Yeah.
Because there's no order to it. I mean, what's the order? Go look and see what you can do.
I order you to look and go and see what you can do. But this is something he did early
Carson
on.
Presumably is the guy in charge of looking to see what he can do.
Well, put your glasses on and look around. We ran into this, I guess, real early, like 2017 and 18, when there were a couple of, as I recall, some healthcare orders where there's a big to-do, and he announced the executive orders, and then we looked at it, and it was, again, the order was, somebody should go look at this and study it and then do what you can do.
Right, and it brings back to David's original rule of Trumpism, which is don't believe anything. Don't believe he signed it. Yeah. Don't believe it says what he says it says. Don't believe anything. Look at it yourself.
Right. If they even produce it. I mean, there have been times when they've said, oh, yeah, it definitely says that. We're just not going to, show you the paper. Like, for instance, not an executive order, but the appointment of Matt Whitaker as acting attorney general. All right, well, just send the order over here.
And well, the guy who's still pretending he's an acting deputy something guy.
Assistant acting deputy for the purposes of this announcement. But I would point out that the reception of these quote executive orders, remember when I say executive orders now everything is in scare quotes, has been less than glowing by the media. They really haven't accepted this as being a masterstroke.
Well, I think at the end of the day, the only thing that sort of looked like it could help him politically was the $44 billion piece. And again, that was what originally outraged me, because I didn't realize there was actually funding that he could, in theory, access. But for the reasons that Stuper has explained, you actually, even that bit doesn't work. And what you just said is also true, because there's also administrative cost of building a new system. Florida's unemployment system couldn't even do it when it already had a system built. So it's not going to work.
Well, it's going to turn out to be, in the end, what Trump did is threaten to cut your Social Security and Medicare. That's what people are going to take away from this.
Sure, we haven't even gotten to that. We'll take a 1-minute break to regroup and think about how to present that part of it. Although,
you and Armando will be back to do that. I'll see you on Wednesday.
All right, very good. You go generate some power or stop generating power, whichever it may be, and we'll see you Wednesday. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We're still got Armando with us. Greg, of course, had to go and check on the generator, which is no longer needed to generate power. But maybe he should give some back to the grid or something like that.
Give it back to the grid.
Since I heard that you could do that sort of thing. But okay. We were in the middle of the non-executive, non-orders. And I did want to leave a note there for myself, and not necessarily what we need to turn to next. But Greg mentioned on the way out the door, and another extraordinarily important part of the whole thing is that the payroll tax, deferment, I guess is maybe one term for it.
It's a deferment at this point. Yes.
Yeah, that they've invented here. Even if it does work, even if they are able to implement it, even if it works the way it's designed, one of the big problems with it is, of course, that's one of the chief funding mechanisms for the Social Security Trust Fund. The whole thing is designed rather interestingly, and I suppose probably by design. All the mechanisms, many of which are legally questionable or even constitutionally questionable. We thought at the beginning, if anyone were to step up and say, none of this stuff is permissible, and I'll prove it to you. I'll go to court and we'll argue about it, and it'll be pretty open and shut. I think they know very well that what that means is while the Republicans and Trump are out there promising, but these orders were supposed to give money to people who have been hurt during the pandemic or have lost their jobs or who need relief from some very real problems. They weren't really providing that relief, but they'll be able to point and say, look at Democrats suing to make sure you don't get it. And so that's it's very clever in a way, except he's a moron.
The thing about it is there isn't a great lawsuit for the House to do here anyway. I wouldn't sue if I was House.
He may have.
Has been my example. I don't think he can stand up this $44 billion thing, which is the only thing that really I find objectionable in certain legal ways. I tell you, there's just arcane things like, just to finish that analysis, to qualify for the assistance that Trump is tapping for the coronavirus financial assistance, you have to have applied for a small business SBA loan and have been rejected before you can get this money.
I did not know that one.
Right.
Okay. Not everyone's done
it just
that.
goes to show you it is not, and there's an express prohibition. I mean, it's not intended to be supplemental unemployment insurance.
Yeah, well, that is a problem.
I mean, it is very clearly not allowed to be used for what Trump has designated its use for. There is funds that have been appropriated by Congress. There are certain powers the president has to draw down on them, but they have to meet certain conditions established by Congress expressly and can't be drawn down for certain things that Congress has also stated expressly. And, it's basically a violation of the law, which, of course, I guess you could argue is a constitutional crisis. But it's just more, to me, less as a serious matter than what have you. Now, but, who's going to sue? I would send a Democratic state governor to sue. I mean, Cuomo's going to sue, I would think. He says, I don't have the money and you can't do this to me, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, or sue on behalf of his state and say, give me the $300 per person.
Oh, yeah, right. That's one of the other mechanisms, right? They the generous $400 of extra unemployment compensation down from $600 where it had been is structured such that the federal government will offer $300, and I don't know what do they put dollar figures or do they put a percentage to it? I can't recall, but you mentioned that it was 25% match.
And they said I believe the order does delineate it on a per week basis.
Right, so that was the federal government was offering up. Said, well, we'll give you 4 out of the 600 that you were getting, but the federal government will only pay 3 of the 400. The state has to come up with the last $100, and if they don't, we won't give you the first 3. So,
no, I mean,
it's designed to.
It's 300. It's not 400. You stop saying 400. The 600, as you know, was all a federal supplement on top of whatever state unemployment provided. And as you know, that varies by state. Some states are more generous than others. Florida's terrible. New York's a little better. Excuse me. So, in essence, who's going to give $300 a week? Now, even at that level, it was projected to run out in like 5 weeks.
Yeah, the $44 billion is not actually a lot of money when you divide it up among 30 million people claiming unemployment benefits, for one thing.
Right. In essence, that's that's right. But of course, states have to stand up a program to do it, because even the executive order recognizes you can't process this through the unemployment system. They need, and you know how hard it is to just come up with a new application process that everybody has to do. Look, you want a bad Democratic example of standing up a system? The Affordable Care Act website.
Okay.
It's hard.
Yeah,
that stuff's hard. You can't just debug it, and no one's thought about it. I mean, Trump just came up with this at his golf course, or they came up with it for him to make a show at his golf course at. This isn't thought through, and the reality is, no one's ever going to see a dime of that $44 billion. So I think the real question politically, though, and I think you hit on one that's going to resonate in a place like Florida, which is not so much the executive orders, but what he proposed at that same press conference, which is that he will have a permanent elimination, I guess, of the payroll tax, which is, of course, the funding mechanism, at least ostensibly, for Social Security and Medicare. So, how are you going to fund that? Well, just print money, I guess, is an option. But, we've been playing with this fiction about Social Security and Medicare forever. So definitely it will be a political issue. I think the other issue is he did this whole thing the other day. And voila, he said it solved just about everything. That's what he said. I'm not making it up. He said, what I'm doing today is just about going to solve everything. Well, it's not going to solve anything. I mean, even if you believed in the $44 billion, that doesn't solve it. And as I think we pointed out, the $44 billion I don't think is really going to happen, but it certainly doesn't solve evictions. Even if you could say we have you could issue a moratorium on eviction by law. I don't think the president himself, he may arguably could have emergency powers to have a nationwide moratorium on evictions, but I don't think he can. I don't think he has that power. And the student loan deferral, fine. Okay, you put everything off till next year. That helps people in short term, presumably. And the payroll tax deferral, I think he pretty clearly has the power to do. I think DACA is a close call, and I think this one's a close call, but I think at this point, there's not going to be a court that's going to rule that he can't. The $44 billion just violates the law. I mean, they look for a pile of money, David, to say he was giving this thing so they could do some plausible thing, but no one actually looked at the law very closely. And I know Mnuchin said OLC signed off on it, but OLC is nothing. It's a joke.
Yeah,
I mean, it's Bill Barr.
They viewed their mission as producing a memo to back up the president's claims, whatever they may be. So they said it's fine, and who knows whether they bothered to look and find out or not. I suspect somebody did. Well, we're going to have to deal with this eventually, so I'll research it. But put the memo out before I finish. There's no sense in waiting. The president wants to have his press conference.
Yeah, there's a bad graphic I'm looking at on MSNBC that says that Trump's executive actions save $400 a week in federal employment. Well,
wrong.
That's just a lie. MSNBC, stop lying to your viewers. Even if you believe the executive order, and you shouldn't, it says $300 a week in federal unemployment.
Yeah.
If the states apply and they pay 25% or $100 a week to the 400. So just even if you believed everything Trump said, MSNBC just lied to you in its graphics, and that's I don't understand. This is their job. They get these things right.
No, calculated.
This is what they do for a living. Jesus.
Yes. Well, what they do for a living is they take communications from important sources, or what used to be important sources, like the White House, and they say, what does it say on there? And they say, it says $400. Well, we have 20 seconds to get on the air here. Type in $400 and put the graphic up. Oh, well, but hold on a second. It says there's supposed to be a 25% match from the states. How are you going to you can't fit that on the screen. 400.
No, you just say it's $300.
Yeah, so, right.
I mean the option, the solution is to say Trump proposes a $300 federal unemployment through disaster relief. And by the way, he doesn't even call it unemployment in the executive order. So even that's wrong, but okay.
He doesn't acknowledge that they're unemployed.
Well, he can't. They don't call it unemployment, by the way, because they can't. They have to try to call it something else,
so that it can be legal.
So it could be.
Maybe
so
they did
OLC
think about
probably
that.
gave the language. You can't call it unemployment. I'm sure there's some notation on there.
Yeah, maybe.
In the drafts, they said no, you can't call it unemployment. You got to call it financial assistance.
Yeah. Oh, that's very dangerous. You hand that. I guess they kept that part away from Trump because Trump would be reading it and saying, "It's not unemployment, but really." It's unemployment. Some people call it other things. I call it unemployment.
Right. Yeah, something like that would have happened.
Oh,
anyway, sorry for the digression, but I just getting back to a point you were making about the politics of this. They just announced this thing, and Trump now is thinking he's going to, have an upper hand on something. I don't even know. I don't suspect that Pelosi and Schumer think he has an upper hand because think about it. He just said he solved everything. So, I don't have to do anything now. You solved it.
Maybe. He is trying to use it as leverage to, I don't know whether he really intends to get them back to the negotiating table or just wants to taunt them about not coming back. But that's an answer that they probably haven't considered. But it's a good one. So, I think this morning he tweeted something like, now the Democrats want to come back to the negotiating table. And I think trying to claim credit for I'm the one that provoked them to do it by putting this executive action out. But, what if you answer, you said it was solved. I saw your press conference. Everybody was clapping, all the golfers. They loved it.
Golfers with their drinks in their hand and no masks. Very nicely done.
Right. Yeah, I did see some...
mean, honestly, I don't see how that plays as a bargaining. He made an announcement that he just solved everything.
I guess that's...
And,
that's true.
I think it's bad for the country, but I think it's bad for Republicans and him politically, simply because if they think this is the political solution to the actual problem of the financial wherewithal of people who can't work because of the coronavirus, they still got to pay their bills, and if the check doesn't show up, they're going to notice that the check didn't show up, and the economy's activity is going to go down, and all the things. You say, wait a second, you solved it, but everything's still terrible. What happened? Look at all the evictions.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's just weird to me.
Course won't notice.
I think in a way, Democrats are so eager to be responsible, and that's a good thing. I'm not criticizing them, but politically, giving Trump any money 85 days from the election is kind of stupid.
Okay.
I wouldn't give it. If you were just completely cynical and didn't care about anything except what does this mean for my political fortunes, if I could just do enough show to pretend like I'm caring and trying, but I really don't want to do anything. Think like the Republicans during 2009. You wanted to be like them. That would be great politics for a short period of time. You can just sort of hold it up until a couple of weeks before the election. Say, okay, we're ready now.
Yeah.
After all the damage is done, because that's going to hurt the president, because the president always gets blamed for bad stuff, and that's just the way it is. So I don't see the politics of this for the Republicans. I certainly don't see it for Trump. It's for making him feel good on a weekend at a golf club. It's like this stupid press conference thing where he brought in these golfers. Now, if I'm in the media, I don't show up to that press conference and I don't broadcast it. I say, you can't have, surround a press conference isn't a rally. You don't get to, if you want a rally, have your rally, but don't call it a press conference and I'm not going to show up for it. You know what I mean? It shouldn't be both. And I don't know. I just don't understand what the people who run these media organizations even think about. Jim Acosta said, "No, I'm being threatened here." Well, don't go. don't go.
Yeah. I guess he's there.
You don't have to be there. There's no news. You're not covering anything. You can watch it on TV and you'll see the same news.
That's
you don't
true.
have to
they
be
don't have
there.
to worry about access, certainly. I guess they're already there. The press pool just follows him around wherever he goes, and he says, all right, I want to move. The guy says he wants to move from golf mode to press conference mode. I got my tie on. Let's go. So they just go, as opposed to, what? This is ridiculous. Or why send your anchors in the weekend press pool anyway? I don't know. And the reason is that he announces those things, and there are still people in the news business that say, when the president comes to a podium, we got to have our guy in a tie there. We can't have some junior staffer sit there and listen and say nothing. We got to have a rich guy sit there and say nothing. And they did do some pushback. There was, I guess, a few questions allowed afterwards, and some good questions were asked. None of them were about these things, because there's no good questions to ask about these things.
Well, this is terrible stagecraft that the media is basically doing to benefit a political campaign. Now, there's something else that's been going on that you probably see me write about. Is all these events that Trump goes to, and he's bashing Biden and the White House, and the government's paying for the flights and the events and everything.
They're doing them in the White House. Yeah, they're paying for the house.
That's illegal.
Yep.
He's the president. Great. Hey, yeah, sure, I'm on it. It's illegal. Now what are you going to do?
Right.
But it is. It shouldn't be run on TV, because they should say, listen, if you're going to have a political event paid on the government dime, we as a media organization are not going to run it.
Yes. Well, that's what they should do, and I don't know why they decided not to. Maybe it's a backhanded way of getting it. Bill Barr can prosecute them for aiding and abetting the crime of violation of the Hatch Act. That'd be funny. We're going to put all you journalists in jail for conspiracy to violate the Hatch Act, which we're not charging the president with. Can't charge him. Could charge everybody else, by the way. And I keep seeing people bring that up and
that's
saying
why the White House South Lawn thing speech isn't going to happen because everybody who moves a chair is going to be subject to Hatch Act.
And he'll have to pardon them. It'll be a big mess. I don't have that many
Sharpies.
Sharpies.
It's going to be more that I'd have to pardon everybody again. I don't know. And Jonathan Turley will defend it, I'm sure. But I think it's bad. The optics are too bad, actually. When you look at it, you almost want him to do that because the optics are bad more than they're good. They just look at him abuse the White House for political purposes. I mean, you're not going to get those 40%. I think that in some ways, so people who always worry, well, he's still up 40. Well, listen, 40% of the country at least is a bunch of, D-bags. I mean, they're deplorable bags.
Yes, that's the
D. It just is. I mean, that's what they're going to be. You can't, it's a problem in the country, sure, but it's a reality, and you can't run your campaign worrying about that and your politics. But, just you got to win. And speaking of winning, that permanent payroll tax cut probably goes away as just walk back, and they're not considering it. But I can't believe, I would certainly hope the Biden campaign is ready to run a nice run of ads that he's going to defund. And I would use the word defund.
That's very popular now, right?
Social Security and Medicare.
Yeah. I mean, that is what's happening. There will be some significant portion of the 40%, base simply responds to it either by saying, well, good, or by saying, I don't see where it says Social Security and Medicare or Medicaid in
That's what they say
anywhere.
Already, but
show me in the executive order, which is an order.
That. Right. And AARP came out and said what it said, attacked them.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad that the case is being made, but I think to the extent that they gave any thought to it in the political shop at the White House, they figured, we can do these things that are illegal because, well, one, no one's stopping us, and two, I'd love to see people file suit to stop us because it'll be Democrats filing suit, and then we can say...
I think that was the plan.
Yeah. They may or may not goad people into actually doing it. Interestingly, the Democrats may, at this point, sat and took an extra day and said, well, so little is being done here that it actually fits under the wire as possibly, if not probably, legal. So, what do we sue over exactly? He's going to...
Right. Well, I mean, and I don't know that the House could have standing just as it does now, again, on the border wall funding. By the way, the border wall funding issue... it was much more egregious than what this is. I mean, there was no funding for the border wall, and he declared an emergency to go build those crappy walls that fall over at the first wind.
Yes.
That was outrageous. And that's actually much more egregious than what this ended up being. This seemed more egregious to me because he was, I thought, just appropriating money. But no, he was purporting to use appropriated funds from the disaster relief fund
that's too much
by declaring COVID-19, which he once declared a hoax, an actual, honest to goodness, natural disaster.
Yes. Well, yeah. So he's done both. Of course, he's called it a hoax. He's called it a national emergency. He's gone back from national emergency back to hoax. I noticed the Washington Post put out a good video compilation the other day, I think a full 2 minutes of him saying just simply that the virus would go away, and the various times he's done it, with the dates. It's some 20-something times. He said, it's just going to go away. But which it'd be interesting, too, I guess, if you ended up in a court case and said, well, we have the authority to move this money because it is a legitimate natural disaster and a national emergency. And, to the extent you care to litigate it, I suppose you could say, I do have 20-plus statements on the record that the president believes that not only that it's not an emergency, but that literally no intervention is necessary. It will just go away. So I'm just curious, what he plans to do about this, with the $44 billion in disaster relief fund for something that's just going to go away. But... I suppose I could say, well, a tsunami goes away eventually, too. You know?
I mean, if I'm envisioning what the litigation would be, I think it's going to be the states attacking, not the $300. They'll take the $300.
Sure.
They'll say you can't make me pay $100.
Yes, right. And that's this too. A good throwback. I think it happened last time there was one of these stupid orders too. A good throwback to one of the old Republican boogeymen that they used to hate, just like executive orders, unfunded mandates to the states.
Yep. There you go.
Used to be, they were going to amend the Constitution to make unfunded mandates to the states.
Okay, I would have loved to see the language on that. What would that look like?
Oh, I don't know. Whatever. I guess now it would be, whatever Donald Trump wants to do is okay, but if anybody else wants to do it, it's not. That's the only way you can write it. But
that was Rick Santorum apparently this morning.
Oh, yeah? Oh, right.
Well, I mean, I just say he's blamed Obama for these executive orders. It's like, oh, he did it first with DACA, of course. Okay, first of all, that's not what happened. But anyway,
yeah.
I actually think that the people sort of, if Schumer and Pelosi have patience, and I'm not talking weeks, I'm just talking a few days, as this story keeps playing out, and people are going to say this was all smoke and mirrors, and another week goes by, and they don't get their 600 because now I assume we're in week 2 of that.
Yeah,
and
that should be over by now.
And that I think it's going to basically the pressure will start building on the Republicans and Trump. I know they have to posture. We're ready to meet. We're meeting halfway. They were ready to meet, and they were meeting. They just they just can't reach a deal. They don't want to give the full 600. I think Pelosi might come down to 550, I would think, is sort of what's in her mind. She won't go below 500. Maybe. I know that. There's just no way. And there won't be any state component. Plus, she wants state and local aid. I think the mail money, the post office money, is pretty important to her now, plus the state and local money. I don't know that she's going to move much on those things. I'm actually very curious to see if McConnell's going to stick to his give companies immunity. Non-negotiable position. I mean, really, I don't know how they're going to live with that as an argument. Especially now that Trump solved everything. But
maybe, I see. By the way, also just sort of interesting looking at the. I guess Trump must have made some remarks on his way back from his little mini golf vacation at the airport this morning. Aaron Rupar pointing out Trump offers contradictory remarks about his involvement or lack thereof in those negotiations about a new coronavirus stimulus bill, pointing out in the way only Trump can say it. I've been involved personally, through my representatives.
He said that before.
Okay. So there you go. So he's got personal representatives, and he sent them, so he was personally hands-on by sending someone else to do this work.
Yeah, I don't know that he needs to be there personally, but
he doesn't.
The reality is I don't think he knows what's going on.
But he wants to take personal credit for it, so that's why he says, I've been involved personally by not being there. Don't you see? The way I was playing golf, I was personally involved because they knew that I was personally the president at the time.
I think he knows what he's against and what he's for. He wants, for reasons that no one understands, he wants this payroll tax thing. I guess Stephen Moore's been whispering in his ear because I don't think Mnuchin cares about it or anybody else, frankly, because it's not going to do anything.
No.
The other thing he cares about is he does not want state and local aid. He goes on and on about bailing out Democratic states and cities. And that's his red line. I don't know how Democrats can give up on that. So I actually do think this is going to be an intractable negotiation if Trump doesn't give up on that, which he probably will eventually. But I think we're actually at least weeks away from a deal on these things. I don't think we're close at all.
I guess not. I mean, they're just approaching it from entirely different directions. I did see
but I think there's just fundamental conceptual disagreements that, and I don't know that Republicans are against it. I think Trump is, I am not going to give state and local aid. I think that's like one little bug that's got in his head. The payroll tax thing is in his head. between you and me, if Trump gave Democrats everything else, I'd give them that stupid payroll tax holiday.
I don't know. I'm not certain, but we'll see where he ends up. I know he's also considering on the $100 match. He's now floating the idea of, well, on a case-by-case basis, I might waive that for states, which of course means I'll waive that for Trump voting states and not for
he can't do that.
States. Well, we'll be back to that. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to Patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We're continuing on with Armando still here. We left off, and I still have to, I guess I'll have to dig this up now, but I know that Trump has been floating the idea and, of course, met with immediate opposition, as it always will, whenever he floats some legal concept. But I don't know what the context was. I imagine he was probably pressed by members of the media saying this idea that you won't come up with the $300 contribution that you propose for people who are on, we're whispering here, unemployment, but not really unemployment, whatever you're going to call it, this additional $300 federal dollars to be matched by, but only if it's matched by $100 from the states. What about states that have put every last dollar that's available to them, and some which aren't have been available to them, into fighting the coronavirus pandemic, which, by the way, you dumped on their laps and said this needs to be, states need to respond to the coronavirus. Which
and schools need to open.
Yeah, they need to open. They're the ones who should be providing for testing. They're the ones who should be providing for whatever quarantining measures are necessary. He might think this is probably consistent with that theory that, well, states should also be responsible for helping out the people who are unemployed as a result of their failure to deal with the coronavirus properly, which I asked them very clearly to do, and they just didn't do it. So it's their fault.
It's them very clearly. I told them it's your responsibility.
Right. Nobody believed me, but it was. I said it was your responsibility.
Or as Jared said, these were our ventilators.
Right. Oh, yeah, the opposite. Right. Yeah. Whose responsibility is it to respond to the coronavirus? Yours. Who's entitled to gather up all the emergency equipment that would make it possible to respond? Us. And, who's going to get it? Whoever we decide to give it to, because these are ours, not yours. It's yours is the responsibility. Ours are the resources. That's
it's amazing to just think that it's possible that someone stood up at a podium and said that, but that's exactly what he said.
Yes. We that's another thing we kind of have to turn around and revisit. But I do think, I'm guessing, and I'll have to dig it up, that the Trump was asked, what about these states that aren't going to be able to afford the $100? You say the $300 isn't going to show up unless the $100 does. And what if they don't have it? And I guess he may have made it up on the spot. He may have been advised to float it. I don't know. He does this sort of thing all the time. And he said, we'll look at it on a case-by-case basis, and maybe we'll waive that $300 or the $100 match requirement if states can make a good case for it, which in Trump world means if this is a state that we think will vote Trump in the, and give me their electoral votes, then I'll waive this requirement. That creates huge problems and disparity of the treatment to the states, and should by all accounts be impermissible, unconstitutional, and illegal. And, maybe it will be and maybe it won't. I don't know. I can't tell you. I used to be able to tell you, but
the
now
one
I
thing
can't.
to recall about all that as well, and again, there's so many things that we can't even remember everything.
Right.
The DACA decision came down in July or in June. The Department of Homeland Security is to this day not processing DACA applications.
Okay, right, yes.
It's been remanded to the court. The court told them, no, you have to do it. And they said, no, we don't.
Yeah.
And they're not doing it.
Well. Acting
DHS Chief Chad Wolf said, that's not what the Supreme Court said. And the judge said, yes, it is. He says, well, who's going to make it?
They said, yeah. And not only can you not make me do that as acting Secretary of Homeland Security, but I'm not even really that. So if you think you're going to order the acting Secretary of Homeland Security to do this thing, I'll just tell you, when the order arrives, I don't know who that guy is. It's not me.
Exactly. Aha! I don't even have the power to do it. So
right.
There, checkmate.
Yeah. Well, who does? We don't know. We don't know any of these things. Speaking of we don't know, totally off the subject, I guess, except other than Trump's crazy, and that's the subject. Speaking of, I don't know who to talk to, but I just want to throw out there that apparently over the weekend, I guess the New York Times discovered this and everybody else, they buried it in an article about how broadly crazy Trump is. But he apparently approached the governor of South Dakota to ask, well, just curious, what's the process for getting a new president's face added to Mount Rushmore? Just asking for a friend, I guess. I don't know whether he even bothered with that kind of dodge. But first of all, my God, imagine, how do I get my face on Mount Rushmore? And two, to then say, you know where you go for these things, right? Where is Mount Rushmore? It's in South Dakota, right? Call South Dakota. Hello, South Dakota? Who is this? This is the governor's office. Governor, how do I get my face on Mount Rushmore? I guess get a running start and jump at it, sir. I mean, what do you mean, your face on Mount Rushmore? Wants to carve it on it. And she, apparently, she thought he was joking the first time he brought it up, and then apparently told somebody, no, he's
honestly,
dead serious.
I get Bart Simpson's crank calls in my head when you just told that story. How do I get my face on South Dakota?
Yeah, right.
Oh, God.
How can I do that? But at some point, I know I put the article away. She shows up for a White House visit, maybe, or he's in South Dakota. Or on his way for the July 4th thing.
Yeah, she said, you should come to South Dakota.
Yeah. But no, at some point later on, that's when she's in D.C., in the White House, when he first proposes it. And then says, you should come to South Dakota, blah, blah, blah. I think maybe when he shows up for the July 4th thing, she's got for him, she has mocked up a model.
Oh, right. She mocked one up.
She's like, spend money. Somebody spend some money. I'd love to know whose money got spent on this one. Make me a model of Mount Rushmore with Trump's face added. And somebody worked on that and did it. And probably, South Dakota, probably somebody was like, this is going to be awesome.
That painter guy.
No.
Whatever his name is.
I was thinking they should use the guy or the woman who restored the devotional paintings in Italy.
Honestly, I didn't make this joke. I haven't heard anybody say it, but I said, listen, Trump, do you know what the mountain you need your face on? The Stone Mountain.
Yeah, right. That's where
they'll put you there.
They might. Look, I don't know whether they'll put him on this thing. I have my own joke has been, yes, there's one circumstance under which I would accept putting Trump on Mount Rushmore, and that is to fling him off the top.
Exactly.
Other than that, carving his face. But I'm just astounded by the whole thing. But really, I'm harping on the part nobody else cares about. Everybody else is the obvious thing is, what are you crazy? What kind of narcissist even asks that question? Mike goes, what kind of idiot says, I know, the governor of whatever state it's in? That's who you call. Because in South Dakota, they vote every couple of years. You want to add a president?
I don't know. My honest reaction at the time, when I first heard the story, I remember responding to somebody's tweet. I said, why is he asking the governor in that monument?
God, I'm glad you asked the same question, right? What? And she must have been like, What?
I don't know. I thought maybe there was something in there that South Dakota had some I don't know, maintenance responsibilities or something over, but
no idea. No. People have answered me and said, well, maybe he figures, the president runs the whole country and but they're in charge of the state. And I don't know, unless it was just he wanted somebody to float the idea for him and he thought she would do it. I got no idea why why would he, of all things, for him to start thinking, you know what, the problem is I want to put my face on it, but my power as president is limited. And I'm going to need,
I think it comes back to the original conclusions I think both of us made about him in 2015, which God forbid is 5 years ago, David.
Yeah, right.
That he's really, really stupid. And he's really, really mentally ill.
Yeah.
He's really, really evil too, but never forget those other two things he is: stupid and mentally ill.
Yeah. I don't know. But it's a diversion, obviously, from what we were talking about, the executive orders. But yeah, and I think I found at least one source of, I'll have to scan it afterwards, but just so I don't leave you without some links in the end to where did you come up with the idea, in case you didn't see it, of Trump floating the idea of waiving the 25% match for certain states. I almost certainly gave that no thought as to what that would do legally. He just said, I'll do it. And what does he care whether it's legal or not? And again, right, who stops him? There's that question. I do think that there's part of this there's the almost crazy, brilliant aspect to it of, why would you propose things that are obviously illegal or unconstitutional in their face? It makes you look dumb. Yes, it does. But what makes what I'm interested in is who's going to stop me, and if it should be easy. Anyone could stop you, basically. All right, fine. Let them stand up and be the ones that get in the way of my rescuing people who are on unemployment, even though my rescue doesn't allow me to call it unemployment. This is the first hint that this thing was screwed up from the beginning. But if they sue, I'll point at them as the problem.
Right.
And that, for many people, will work.
That was the smartest guy in the room who came up with that idea. And who would that have been? Not Jared, not Trump. So maybe it was Mark Meadows. I don't know.
Barr. I don't know what room he was in, but Bill Barr keeps speaking as though he's in the room all the time. I did notice that too. So he was talking about what a great White House.
I know I can tell you who wasn't in the room. It was Larry Kudlow, who didn't even know right. how the freaking thing worked.
Well, he didn't know the numbers either.
He didn't even know the numbers.
That was bizarre. I noticed he was on TV again, which is bizarre all by itself. Why anybody says yes. He's the guy we should have. And he was on there saying,
let's have the cokehead on TV again. That's
right.
Good thinking.
The whole world is arguing over, is it $300 or $400?
Call him a junkie, right?
I guess. Why not? It's true.
It's true.
What are you waiting for? It's just it was an uptown drug, that's all. But anyway.
Uptown drug.
So they had him on, and the whole world is arguing, all right, is it $300 or $400? And Kudlow says, it's $800. It's what? I don't know where that came from, but apparently he spent his time on TV saying, I don't know why you guys are talking about $400. It's $800. No, it isn't. The whole point of this negotiation was, you do know that, right? You guys were negotiating to bring it down, not up.
I think Pelosi would take $800 if they're offered.
Right. I don't know where that idea came from, but he agreed to go on television, and he said the wrong number, and he kept at it, and I don't know why that isn't a bigger deal, except that everyone has authority. Well, he's without authority. Everyone knows it. It's not 800.
Kudlow just goes on TV. I don't think he actually does anything.
No.
Peter Navarro goes on TV and whispers in Trump's ear about how awful China is and says, call it the Wuhan virus.
Right.
Or the Chinese virus. They should have stopped it, David. They should have stopped it. Jinping, I have a great relationship with him, but he should have stopped it.
I should have given him more beautiful chocolate cake. That was never worked.
Cake.
Yeah.
That was a Japanese guy, though. I think he gave the cake to.
No,
it was. You're right. It was a Chinese guy. I'm wrong.
Yes. Well, be careful about mixing them up. You can't do that.
But
both were at Mar-a-Lago.
Remember, he played golf.
Yes.
They had the thing in Mar-a-Lago in 2017.
Yeah.
And he played golf with Abe.
Yes.
Actually, at a course not far from my house. But he had chocolate cake with Xi at Mar-a-Lago itself.
Yes, right. And he bragged it was the most beautiful chocolate cake he'd ever seen, and that this was this
was right after the crowd size. I mean, this has been just an insane nightmare. Now it's just unbelievable. It's got to end in 85 days, please.
And then we will find out what the real damage is that he could be doing. I suppose I don't want to not have the lame duck period because I'd rather win this election, of course, but I am a little fearful of what he does during the lame duck period. We just have to find out.
Yeah, I mean, we got to live through it.
You can't not do it because you're worried about it.
The alternative is worse.
Yes,
obviously. The lame duck period 4 years later.
Yeah, right.
But,
so what's the difference?
We won't be here to see it probably.
Right.
But
we'll have the coronavirus by then. More other reporting on it. By the way, New York Times definitely did pick up on the other confusion, noting that that Mnuchin and Kudlow also, I guess, disagreed over. I don't know whether they disagreed beforehand or afterwards. Disagreed over the payroll tax suspension. Mnuchin, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, had doubts that the deferred payments would actually be forgiven in the end. Remember that the Trump plan is, well, I will defer the payments, and true, that doesn't remove the obligation to pay them. They'll come due next year, and that could either mean when Joe Biden is president, so what the hell do I care? Or if I'm president, I will then instruct Congress, which would more than likely be democratically controlled at that point. I'll instruct Congress to change the law such that the deferred payments are no longer due. And then that, too, would lay that at the feet of Democrats and say, Democrats are the ones who want to raise your taxes. They're doing it right out of the box. They're raising your taxes. But, they'll point out, well, legally speaking, it was never within your rights to
no, you never, there were no tax cuts there for payroll.
But,
taxes,
you know how that will go over. But even Mnuchin is like, they're never going to, waive collection, we can waive the collection, but they'll never forgive those taxes. I don't think that's ever going to work.
Has anyone actually done the math? How much money we're talking about here? By the way, not that anybody cares about the debt or the deficit anymore. But until January 1st,
right?
Hopefully, right?
But
then the Republicans will become very frugal.
Somebody must have done some math somewhere just on the back. Not them. I mean, not in preparation for the announcement, but afterwards. Surely somebody picked up a pencil and tried to figure that out.
You think so? Who do you think did that? Jared?
A New York Times reporter. No one in the administration bothered, I'm certain. But the article I have in front of me.
Someone could figure it out. It was $104,000 and below, no payroll tax. So you probably could figure out the number of people who in normal times earn that amount, and you would know what's costing the Treasury.
Yes. So, but I haven't seen the number discussed prominently enough that it made it to my consciousness, so I am not sure.
Where's Maya McGinnis when you need her, man?
Yeah. She could be.
Does anyone even remember who Maya McGinnis is? I know you do, but do you think anybody else does? In case you don't know, she was Pete Peterson's girl who always was very upset about the debt and deficit.
It's crushing her.
Yeah, it was crushing. It says it's going to crush future generations. But, for 3 years, I've not heard a word from her.
She's busy with the reorganization of Kick the Can, I believe.
Yeah. It's funny. I imagine she's still doing her same press releases, but the media just isn't picking up the phone to call her anymore.
Yeah, well, they're distracted, and rightly so, with other things. Yeah, I'm finding, let's see, the comments on Kudlow floating $800 figures for some reason. But, I don't see anything about anybody calculating this out. And it should be a fairly simple thing to do. And I guess the poor OMB guys have to go do this calculation. But
remember, the proposal is not to not collect the taxes. The proposal is to defer collecting the taxes.
Yeah. So that may be the excuse that they can use. I don't know. It brings me back to the Ukraine machinations. All of a sudden, like the idea of, we don't have to report that we're not spending these funds because we have up until September to do it. We have no intention of doing it, but for the meantime, we won't do the work of figuring it out. And maybe at OMB, they're like, well, this isn't a tax cut. I don't have to figure out the revenue costs of it because it's going to get collected later. But what if it doesn't? Well, if it doesn't, call me. I'll do the numbers. But right now, there's been no tax cut.
Call when that happens.
Yeah. But here, Mnuchin doesn't even believe that it's going to happen. So.
Well, I mean, as an employer, you're sort of, what are you going to do? You're going to have to pay it. You think you're not going to spend the money. So the whole point of it, let's say, you're going to let me not pay now, but I have to pay later. So what do you want me to do? Spend the money now so I don't have it later?
Hold it in escrow and earn interest on it.
Your kids are getting ready for college, David. We're going to defer your college payments until then. So, but when it shows up, if you haven't saved, how are you going to pay for college? So it's kind of weird.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how you plan for it. And as you know, I believe the rule is business loves chaos and loves to not be able to plan for anything whatsoever. And that's why we had to have a businessman in the White House so that there would never be any plans.
Hey, can I actually take the advantage of what you just said to talk about the most irresponsible, quote, institution, unquote, in this whole corona situation?
Why not?
And I know it sounds weird. The stock market.
Oh, okay.
Let me tell you what. The stock market is been his whole fixation with regard to COVID, right?
Yes.
It's why he lied about it in the beginning, because Deborah Messonnier, who runs infectious diseases or tropical disease, I forget which particular center she runs.
She knew what she
but
was
remember,
doing.
January 27th, she said it's going to be, we're going to have school closings and business closings and all that stuff, which, of course, we ended up having.
Mm-hmm. Good prediction.
And the stock market took a big tumble that day. And Trump yelled at her, and she never said it again. She said, Trump, from then on, her only thing she would say is, Trump is the kindest, warmest, gentlest, most amazing man I've ever met. So the market sort of bounced up because Trump said, this isn't happening.
Yeah.
And then it happened anyway. And then the market fell some. But then this happens day after day after day. The reality is the fundamentals of the economy do not support where the stock market is. And I know it's they're gambling. I get it. So they're not doing anything. But the fact is, people used to look to the stock market as some type of symbol of something. Remember how the bond market made us keep deficits low? What was Carville's old line about? I'd want to be the bond market. Somebody more powerful than the bond market. Well, what happened to that?
I don't know.
If the stock market went down based on Trump not being for masks or doing more testing and all that stuff, you think he might react back to it and say, I've got to do something? Because that's like the one thing that he reacts to is the stock market.
Yeah, I'm not certain why, except that's you do say it's a symbol of things. For him, it's a symbol of being rich. Like what rich guys do is they worry about the stock market because they're invested in the stock market, and a lot of their wealth is tied up in the stock market. He's not a big investor, I don't think. He's never had cash to.
He's a money launderer, and now a grifter.
But he's never been a big investor. He's not a Warren Buffett person who makes and builds his wealth through savvy investment in the stock market. He may have, I'm sure he owns some shares of something. But I think generally speaking, the people he wants respect from are other people who are genuinely rich, and they depend on the stock market.
He certainly doesn't have major holdings. Now that I recall, when he does his financial statements, he doesn't really list, holdings in any particular companies other than the Trump Organization.
Yeah.
Companies.
Right. And so, I mean, billionaires, genuine billionaires, they tend to own large blocks of stock. I mean, very often preferentially purchased.
Yeah, they have a lot of cash and they want to get a return on it. That's what they do.
He does.
No, he does it.
He works in a totally different aspect. And I'm sure there are ways, I guess, legitimately to earn lots of money in those businesses. It's just not what he does. But he, I think, thinks of it as a prestige thing. The rich people I know, the rich people who belong to my clubs, the rich people who, not the ones I launder money for, they don't own stock per se, but they launder their money through real estate. That's how I get paid off from them. But genuinely rich people who are businessmen, that's one of the things they care about. I don't really know why. It doesn't matter. Just they do. It's on the news. There's a ticker on the bottom of the screen whenever you watch the news. That shows you it's important. And so, therefore, that's going to be a thing for me. But he has spent an awful lot of time doing what look like small-scale stock manipulation schemes, announcing his endorsement or an executive order ordering everybody to take hydroxychloroquine or something. But he's sold individual companies along the way, which I think he just does. One, and as a general stock market boosting scheme, but two, I imagine that there are friends who stand to make a lot of money behind that. And he says, if I boost your thing, you're going to pay me a chunk back. I kick it back to me in campaign donations or whatever. He's been very explicit in that. What did he say the other day where, he was getting himself involved. Right. He was getting involved in mergers or in the TikTok thing, actually, where he was trying to force the sale of TikTok to an American company and take it out of Chinese hands, which was an interesting play, security wise. But he actually blurted out somewhere that TikTok should kick money back to him when the sale is made because he's the one that created the value by forcing the sale. Or, what he hopes to do. And he was actually, I can't believe that's another one of those things. What did you just say out loud? Are you crazy? You just said that the whole thing was a kickback scheme to you? Or should be? Or that's the way you think of things? That as president, the things you order for reasons of, ostensibly reasons of national security, well, you're going to force a sale on somebody, right? And then say, well, you'll be making a lot of money, so what are you worried about? Besides which, you should give me that money. I'm the one that made you sell the company. I created that wealth for you. Give me it. Like, wow, don't ever hint that you think that way. I don't know. I was astonished by that one, and that one. It was. At least there were problems.
Right. Just to close the circle, I know we're going to the end, and I haven't been on for a while, but it just reminded me because I saw that. It was reported that Ivanka Trump earned $3.9 million from the government post office building, now called Trump International, which is, as you may have heard from us 4 years ago or 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, is a government building that's leased to the Trump Organization. Yes. And it has a clause that says any government official can't have this lease. And, of course, there are prohibitions against the president, the emoluments prohibitions that obviously nobody cares about, but also against government employees earning monies from government sources. Yeah. And yet Ivanka Trump reported earning, again, $3.9 million as her share of the profits for the Trump organization.
Yeah,
in that hotel.
She works in the White House, and I think the original argument was, well, the president isn't really a government employee; he's something else.
He's the government,
right? Yeah, but Ivanka, I mean, maybe she says I'm unpaid. I don't know whether she takes $1 or for formality, or whether she is unpaid. I don't know. Maybe that's on the financial disclosure form. But again, you're a White House senior advisor. That's what you tell everybody you are. And that's what really matters. It doesn't matter how much you get paid for that job. It's that you have the president's ear and you can take this money and keep it. And that's wrong. And yeah, once again, they're dancing right by it. And I guess maybe that's the flood the zone strategy working for you. Everybody is worried and said, well, I don't know whether they can only give $300 and have the states match it. Yes, but Ivanka just stole $4 million.
There you go.
Man, why wasn't I paying attention to that? Yeah.
There you go.
I guess
All
it
right,
works.
thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here.
Appreciate it.
Nice to have you again. Take care. I'm sure there'll be another outrage soon enough. And we'll discuss things then. As for the rest of you, it's time now for me to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We might as well get right to it. You can run over some of the things that he's got on tap for you and then back up and run over them again. How about that? Trump's executive memorandums are, of course, absurdly unconstitutional, and they'll be covering exactly why from his angle there. On the rest of the menu, voters keep choosing to expand Obamacare under Trump. That was good news, too. I wonder, they must really like it after all. Huh?
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Look at this territory. We almost made it to here. Eastman Kodak's $765 million U.S. loan agreement is on hold after allegations of stock manipulation. Didn't we just say that? Developed in a dark room. And then, of course, some international news. I would try and force this one through, but I think I'm going to run out of time. So let me just tell you this. It's another tour de force. Stay tuned.